All right, I got the recording going.
You got it going?
Yep.
So is this still season 4, Ken, or is it?
No, I'm calling it 5.
Okay.
Yeah, everything moving forward is 5. Season's over.
All right. Season -0, or
I'll just
season 5, summer session 2.
Yeah, I mean, it'll just be episode 2. I mean, we'll just rock and roll it if we end up with fucking 47 episodes.
And then is the intent to do a World Cup preview one maybe next weekend?
I'll be out next weekend. You guys can certainly do that, especially if Vass can be on and you can get some people to do it.
Because next weekend is, what's that, the 4th?
Correct. Yes.
We could do it the 11th. We don't have to do one next week. We could do one on the 11th, and maybe some good stuff has happened. So it's not all just about World Cup and not Spurs.
Yeah. Every other weekend, starting last weekend, I'm going to be out of town probably for about a month and a half. She's got a house that she needs to sell up in northern Arkansas, and we're working on getting that thing kind of set up and ready to sell. So I've been helping her do that. But every other weekend I'll be available. She works every other weekend, so.
Alrighty.
Yeah. So the 11th.
If we do one on the 11th, you've got the start of the World Cup on the 14th and the Premier League fixtures coming up. So
let's do that. Yeah. Let's do the 11th.
All right.
And if we get a big signing, if you guys want to do an impromptu one next weekend, that's fine.
Works for me.
All right. Season 5, summer session number 2. We're going to discuss the new signing contract extension for Pochettino. 5 years. We'll get into that here in just a minute. Simon's joining me this morning. Simon, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Saturday morning. This is weird.
It is weird. Cartoons and Fruit Loops is what we're supposed to be doing, but we're not. Timmy's also with us. Tim, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great.
Awesome.
Tim does do cartoons and Fruit Loops.
I prefer Captain Crunch peanut butter. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
And will be for a long time with that new baby of yours. As always, Hotspur America Podcast can be found on social media platforms known as Instagram at the Hotspur America Pod, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Find us on your Spreaker app as well as iTunes and the App Store on your Apple devices. Go and download that today. It is a free app. You got to listen to a little stupid commercial at the beginning, but then you get the app or the podcast, so no big deal. The reason we're doing this summer session, obviously, big signing. We've talked about it on previous podcasts. The most important person to keep at the club is Pochettino, and that just happened with a new 5-year extension for him and his coaching staff. Tim, why was it so important to get this done right now with a year left?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. One, I don't know how much truth is in these, but there were the rumors swirling about what's going to happen after the Champions League final. If Real Madrid lose, Zidane could be losing a spot, and they're looking at Pochettino. There's the talks about Chelsea sacking Conte and looking at Pochettino. So one, I think it puts those to bed. If there was any truth in it at all, it makes it clear that he's staying here, and it also makes it clear to potential players in the transfer market that you don't have to worry about coming to us and our manager leaving the same summer that you sign. So I think it sends a message before we do any business in the transfer market. But really, what I think it was is it signals the next phase of the Pochettino project, moving into the new stadium, talking about, his post-Leicester comments about starting something new, building onto it, that next phase. I think really that's why we did it now. It signals that, and it locks him down long term, so we have that security moving forward.
Simon, Tim mentioned the next phase of the project. The club has actually touted this up, and I've seen it on multiple journos as well, their Twitter accounts and whatnot. They're talking about this more as the next phase of Tottenham's history, that this is such a monumental undertaking that the club is doing with the new stadium, with the Northumberland development project, and with the Pochettino signing as much a part of that as anything. How important is this to the club's entire history as we move forward?
First thing, Poch out. Don't want the Muppet at the club anymore. No, I'm kidding. No, I think it's massive. I was giddy as a schoolchild because he has done so much for this club, and I know I'm in the but we need a trophy campaign, and we do. And I know, I think Sam has put it out there that us being viable in the Premier League and the Champions League is more important than the domestic trophy, and the club views that as part of this project, I guess. But as much as I still want us to win a trophy, and I think we need to go out there and do that, we're not quite ready for the premier competitions, the premier tournaments. But I think this springboards us very well for that. It's going to be important, obviously, getting into the stadium. And I think we need to touch on, the progress. I know they did the sliding trays this week and everything worked out great there. But getting to the stadium, compete back in the Champions League again, so you can check off both of those two. I think we can still be competitive in fighting for the Premier League title. But I think the key, now that we have Poch in, see what I did there? Now that he has signed and committed for 5 more years, and again, it's just a piece of paper. Anything can happen. We've all seen what Levy has done in the past, but at least it gives him that freedom. And I think his conversations have to have been with Levy about, well, what are you now going to give me? Those comments that came up post Leicester about taking a risk, about committing to the project further, has to have been positive for him to have signed so quickly. And, he was in Denmark with Eriksson having dinner. Don't know if that's to say, hey, I'm signing, and we want you to commit to the next 3 or 4 years with the club. We've obviously had 4 early signings the week that the season ended. We thought it was 5, but we all got duped by that fake Twitter account, bastard. And so I think if Eriksson commits, if we get Delhi, Kane is on a longer-term contract. I don't see him re-signing anything further at this point, maybe in another year. But this really does set up the next 3 to 4 years for Tottenham. I don't want to go beyond that. But again, we've said it on the show before, and I think it's been echoed in other places, that this season is a critical, pivotal season to where we go from there, because we've got to bet in a new stadium. We're competing in the Champions League, and it is time for Pochettino to now go a step further. You could argue we took a step back, ending up in third, but we were in the Champions League doing well, whereas the season before we did not. We did get to the semis of the FA Cup again and failed at the same hurdle. So, I know we haven't graded the season or the players, but it was at least pretty close to the year before. If we do push on, something's got to give. We've got to get to a final. It's got to be a couple of points, or we win the Premier League title. It's going to be tough, and I don't want to start getting into predictions for next season. We'll save that for later in the summer. But how can City kick on from last season? They can't. I mean, something has to give there, but how much will give? I can't see them signing a lot of players. That when something is not broken, you don't need to fix it. But I'm sure Guardiola will tweak 1 or 2 positions and get a couple of players in for them to be able to defend that title.
And defend it they will, I'm sure, and very well. And other teams around us are also going to be making improvements. Again, it's been rumored that the war chest, the transfer kitty for Pochettino, is around 100 million. Pales in comparison to the Uniteds and the Cities and the Chelseas of the world that can spend up to $250 million in a summer window. Tim, this new contract makes Pochettino the 3rd highest paid manager in the Premier League, behind Pep and behind Mourinho. So he's making more than Emery, who just signed with Arsenal. We'll get into that here in a minute. Conte, Klopp. Does he deserve this? Simon talked about he's kind of in that camp where we need to win some silverware. Does he deserve this right now?
I mean, from the perspective of a Spurs supporter, yes, I think he does, where he's taken this club from, look at the squad that he inherited, what he had to deal with. He's taken us from Kirikes and Kabul to Toby and Vertonghen, like building Vertonghen
Don't forget
up.
Fazio.
And
Don't
Fazio.
forget Fazio, buddy.
I know Vertonghen was there before he came, but he had that little sour attitude that summer before the Euros and before Poch came in, and he's kind of turned Vertonghen around into a leader. Just the ideals that he has instilled in this squad, the chances he's given to young players and built them up, what he's done for the likes of Dyer and Dele and Kane, I think he deserves it from our perspective. But I can also see, the everyday pundit where they're coming from, saying, why does he deserve to be paid more than these managers when he hasn't won anything? Look at Conte. He's won, FA Cup, Premier League. Why does Pochettino deserve to be paid more than him? So I can definitely see that side of it. But I think as a Spurs supporter, he definitely deserves it, because you got to think about who are the teams that we're going to be competing with to try and, keep them away from him. So we have to think about the salary in terms of that. But at the end of the day, it's not money that it comes down to for Pochettino. I know when he left Espanyol, they were in kind of a financial crisis, and he could have made his last year's salary when he left and, not been coaching there, but he agreed to waive it for the club with the condition that his coaching staff and all the coaching staff still gets paid. So he waived his whole last year's salary that he could have made. So for him, it's not about the money, but I think he is worth what he's being paid, just seeing what he's done with this club and with the players. And even looking back at Southampton, how many players he has turned in the England internationals. You got, Ricky Lambert, Jay Rodriguez, Adam Lallana, Nathaniel Klein. He worked with James Ward-Prowse some over there. So just what he's able to do with these players, I definitely think he warrants that type of salary.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's important to remember, £8.5 million a year is substantial money for Tottenham to bandy around. It's more than what Levy was reportedly stating as his salary the year before. And because we know there might have been some heartache with some of the players hearing that, if these new contracts are comparable, not going to say they're going to be that kind of money for all the squad, but if that kind of money is being awarded to the manager, you got to think the player salaries and contracts being renegotiated are going to be at a significant clip. So it signals the intent that we're not a cheap club when it comes to the payroll. And I understand there's a structure, and Levy has been very, very clear on the fiscal responsibility of the club, knowing that at the same time we've got all this debt and paying off the stadium. So for him to commit to that kind of salary to the manager, the war chest for transfers this summer, and we know how much money the club made out of their Premier League placing, their European placing, the run in the FA Cup, it all contributes to that war chest, as well as helping offset some of the debt on the new stadium. So signal of intent by that amount of money, Tim, is absolutely massive and cannot be understated.
After the Leicester match, Pochettino made some comments in his post-match interviews with the press, saying that there's a lot of talk between us and the club that needs to happen. Daniel and I need to sit down. I'm sure he will listen. I have crazy ideas and the whole bit. Does this contract, Simon, signal that those meetings went favorable? That maybe Pochettino is going to have a pretty good say on the. We talked about maybe it's perhaps not money, but personnel, the type of players that he wants to bring in. Does this signal that maybe that was a very positive meeting, that he's signed a new 5-year deal?
Well, I think so. I think absolutely no doubt about it whatsoever. But if you think about that, I don't say controversy, but if Pochettino really didn't want Lucas Moura and Levy's appeasing him with someone during the winter transfer window, if that kind of topic came up in the conversation, then you got to think Pochettino is going to have full control on the transfer policy as far as identifying the targets. This is who I want. Now go get them. And here's where we can offset that by selling players X, Y, and Z. So definitely think it's a positive. But what stipulations that Pochettino made to Levy upon signing the contract obviously is down to those two.
I can be assured on one of the stipulations, and this is just my opinion, but the timing of signing players. This has been something that really pisses Poch off. He needs that full 6 weeks because his preseason is what is so crucial to his squad. The fitness level, being able to play the high press. When you bring in